Hi, my name is Dominika Pipowska, and today I will present my manifesto, which is called The Theatre of Cruelty and Desire. The Theatre of Cruelty and Desire is a manifesto that is challenging the issues of freedom of sexuality and gender diversity by creating new architectural dimension, where through a labyrinth of performance spaces, the spectator as well as a performer experience transgression. By juxtaposing the most turbulent experiences and emotions of the pain and promiscuity, but also love that accompanies queer community and those who dare to question their sexuality, it aims to destabilize established norms and create a universe liberated from repression, judgment, and scrutiny. So my site is located on the upper part of Ulster Road next to the Cromer Road, and includes abandoned building and obsolete space. The abandoned building is a Malcolm House. It was old office and then school built in the 60s. The area mostly village and Bosso here is known from its cultural diversity, variety of ethnic and bohemian communities, but also it has a broad history of crime and prostitution. From last term design exploration, the idea and the concept of transgression emerged from my testing and mappings around the site. Have recorded people breaking the rules of crossing the street in not designated areas. And from those recordings, I could estimate approximate time of crossing and starting point. In order to find a way how to organize and analyze my data, I looked into Bernard Strumy's work, specifically the Manhattan Transcript. Author divides reality into 3 levels: the world of object, the world of movement, and world of event. Situations described in the transcript are represented through a diagram consisting of photograph of the action, plans and attitudes, notions, and moments that are linked. That became my inspiration for my future diagrams, where I categorize actions and of crossing the road into pictures of event and approximate direction, angle, in relation to time and angles itself. So I worked out a simple formula that allowed me to create a series of possible angles and paths that resulted in the field diagram. But what is transgression? Simple definition is that transgression is an act of breaking the law, contravention of rules or social norms, as well as a driving force for scientific research and revolution. In architecture of transgression, to transgress means to go beyond boundaries, challenge the established rules and law. It's neither good or bad. It depends from the conventions of time, judgment, context, and personal position. It is also architecture's willingness to break free of its role in domesticating society's deepest fears, to occasion severs its bondage in order to change, challenge, as well as reflect society's ideal. Now, some might think that queer community and queer society is full of transgression. That led me into the idea of violence and pleasure. And the question was how to create space for those activities and those of queer community where experiences will be the most deliberate and felt, and what exactly those spaces are. Moreover, how to investigate spaces of desire and fear where architecture is intimately connected with sexual fantasies, fears, and identity, where sexual identification and sexual practices are not separated from architectural spaces in which they take place. Architecture typifies gender stereotypes in our society. Within my research, I've selected 7 experiences that closely connected with questioning and experimentation with one's sexuality, and those acts some people might consider transgressive. Those experiences are revolution, with a space to express anger and disagreement where the past is remembered, and the urge for new future, acceptance and freedom starts. Voyeurism, where intention is to show the social differences in regards to those under control, as spectator and the fear that comes with those under surveillance. The spectator can become performer, but performer can become spectator. The spectacle of those under surveillance is exacerbated by the fact that when it comes to certain areas in the building, they may not always be aware that they are being watched. Promiscuousness with cruising, where people can find their sexual freedom in public sphere. Excess, where the main intention is to amplify gender and sexual diversity via entertainment and to show freedom from the social constraints of its current paradigm. Lust. Inspired by the Bergen Club in Germany, this nightclub-like atmosphere is there to inspire reflection on oneself and on those experiences that you had in this space prior to it. Violence, with its significance and disregard for it, represented through a theatre of cruelty, a show expressing the cruelty the queer community experience. Liberation, a space which amalgamates the intentions that came from excess and lust, but also merges with the feeling of loss and pain that would naturally occur with any mass gathering. The main components of the scheme we can divide into Markham House, that was stripped from its facade and left with naked concrete structure, the theatre itself, the existing residential house next to it that the bridge connects to, and the envelope facade and the bridges. The amount of main structure of the theatre itself was reduced by integration of the Markham House. Therefore, the biggest support was only needed on the back and the front parts of the theatre, where the form goes beyond the Markham House. The main structural support consists of composite load-bearing beams and precast hollow concrete, with still secondary support system. This is the external visual from the main road. The new building overtakes all concrete structure, a contrast with the surroundings. It's also surrounded by walls that consist of aluminium panels and perforated panels. Building reveals itself slowly, but draws attention and controversy. Here, the buildings are about old and new, with juxtaposition that reflects it but doesn't confront it. Building is accessed from the first floor, where staircase entrance can be found by following red path extending beyond the site. The ground floor serves as a private part for deliveries and maintenance. The idea is that there is no right way, and you're going through the experience like through a labyrinth. The building itself exposes you or hide. You are embracing the junction between old and new, like the beam concrete connections, rough and exposed. The interior atmosphere is enhanced by red lighting and perforated mesh covering the windows. Here, you are trapped and powerless, hurled into the center of the action, forced to engage with the performance on an instinctive level. There is no stage or seating, with the emphasis on sound rather than words, or dialogue or deliberate cruelty. Journey through the rest of the building can be disturbed, but the bridge cutting through the theatre and linking the residential building nearby, where it's taken over the apartment that will serve as accommodation for performers. Across the building you can find bedrooms as well, that serves as accommodation and part of the show. As for the building itself, the primary and secondary structure of the building, the Malcolm House, has been preserved, which has helped to reduce the use of new materials for my scheme. There's also an aesthetic contrast reminiscent of the old pattern and traditional construction methods and use of materials such as concrete. The envelope roof inclination angle between 30 and 40 degrees and the southeastern orientation make it helps to provide considerable amounts of direct natural light. Natural stack ventilation through atrium in the center of the building as well through open space in a high roof. Fresh air enters through ventilated double skin, envelope and window. Flows through and warm air is released on the top through roof windows. Ventilation for rooms with minimum amount of windows or no windows is provided mechanically as well as naturally if applicable. Bridges are an extension of the theatre of cruelty and desire. They pierce its mass as well as it pierces the structure of existing house. In particular, the old Robinson furniture factory converted into apartments. The bridges are a metaphor for violent infiltration of cultures and their differences, but also as an opportunity to create links between diverse societies. The dark and intimate atmosphere of the corridors is a special contrast between the bright homes inside the apartments. The structure of the bridge cuts into the wall of the building near the apartment window at angle. This marks the contrast between regularity and breaking it, but also is underlined by the difference in materials. Classic red brick contrasts with the dark aluminium filler and the perforated aluminium cladding. Moment of junction between the brick and wall extend beam supporting the bridge is filled with aluminium plate. Irregularity of ripped brick is intentional and serves as a metaphor of violent intrusion. At the moment the existing dwelling is sown, the cladding is stopped and the rest of the bridge structure remains exposed and continues to hook onto the walls for stability. The floor of the bridge is above the floor of the apartment. For this reason, additional steps are provided. Bridge beams break through the wall and the rest of the existing column. The treatment is drastic and exposed, emphasizing anger and transgressions the queer community faces, but also breaking the boundaries and rules. The connection between beams is simple, but symbolizes chance for unity and tolerance. As a part of housing for the theatre and creating a bridge between societies, existing apartment would be rented out when the original residents are not there. It would be converted into flexible apartment with movable walls, so performers can adjust the space according to their need and then bring back the original layout. Thank you for listening to my presentation.